We're going to be reading Arrows today by Dina, Anastasio, and you guys will be reading along. You guys can just use this as an audio, so have your headphones in and just go ahead and read the words along with me in your head, of course. So we're going to start officially on page 4. The first arrow. Paloma was tossing her new ball high into the Mississippi air when she discovered the first arrow in the forest. On that summer morning, she was aiming for the sun, throwing the ball higher and higher, so when it came down and rolled away, she had only herself to blame. The ball bounced off a tree trunk, flew over a log, and came to rest at the base of a huge boulder. She was digging the ball out from the heavy undergrowth when she noticed the arrow carved into the lower part of the massive rock. Paloma grabbed her ball and raced home. Her grandfather was resting on the porch swing. His eyes were closed, and for a moment she wondered whether she would wake him with the news. You've discovered something, he said softly, when she was settled beside him. I can tell by the way you're fidgeting. I've found an arrow, Papa. Paloma kicked her feet, and the swing moved back and forth, making a gentle, reassuring, squeaking sound. And where is this arrow that excites you so much? Paloma told her grandfather about the bouncing ball, the boulder, and the arrow that was carved near the bottom of it. Do you think the arrow is a glyph, like the ones in my code books? Paloma asked. Maybe it's a Mayan hieroglyphic. The Mayans used tiny pictures instead of words and letters. Maybe they carved that arrow, Paloma guessed. Papa pulled himself out of the swing and smiled down at his granddaughter. That's a very good question, he said. But I doubt that the Mayans were carving rocks around here. The Mayans lived farther south in Mexico and Central America. However, your arrow might very well be part of a code of some kind, but we might have to do some research to find out. Paloma's grandfather knew a lot about codes. In fact, he had won a medal for his code work during World War II. Papa and other native code talkers had helped the United States and its allies win the war by sending secret messages in languages that people from other nations could not understand. Will you tell me again, Papa? Paloma pleaded. Paloma loved to hear the story of the code talkers, even though she had heard it many, many times before. She especially liked to hear about the Mississippi Choctaw code talkers like her grandfather. Come, her grandfather said, as he took her hand and pulled her from the swing. I think we should visit this mysterious arrow. I'll tell you about the code talkers while we walk. As they made their way toward the boulder, Papa told Paloma the story of how he and other code talkers sent messages that other native code talkers could interpret. This group of Oklahoma Choctaw soldiers from World War I paved the way for other native languages to be used as codes in World War II. Questions. We spoke into walkie-talkie radios. He explained. There was a code talker on each end, and we would only use Choctaw words that no one else could understand. Someone would give me the message that I was to pass on, and I would speak the words in Choctaw. The code talker on the other end would receive my message and translate it into English for the soldiers. If the enemy was listening on the radio, they wouldn't be able to understand what we were saying. Paloma and her grandfather were at the boulder now. They knelt down, and Paloma pointed to the roughly carved arrow. Wind and rain had eroded and smoothed the arrow's edges so much that Paloma might not have seen it had she not been paying attention. What do you think it means? She asked. Papa ran his finger back and forth over the carving. I'm not sure, he said. It's a very old carving, but it's hard to determine its age. It takes a lot of work to figure out how old a carving is. How do people know? Paloma asked. Well, there are many ways. Remember the cave paintings we saw last summer and the old fossils and bones we saw at the Natural History Museum? Scientists use a method called carbon dating to figure out how old things are. Can we use it to tell how old our arrow is? Paloma asked. Maybe someone could date the plants and the cracks nearest to the carving, but that might not necessarily tell us how old the carving itself is, Papa told her. Let's try something else. Let's try studying the arrow as it is. Paloma stared at the arrow for a long time. Suddenly she had an idea. I know, she shouted. Let's consider where the arrow is pointing. The arrow was pointing toward another boulder nearby. Paloma and Papa followed it and found the second arrow almost immediately. The second arrow was pointed in the same direction as the first, so they followed that one too. It led to another boulder and another arrow, which led to yet another and then another arrow. There were 6 arrows in all. I bet there are even more arrows to follow, Papa. Paloma smiled as she ran her fingers over the 6th arrow. Well, I think we should look for the next arrow then, Papa laughed. The arrows are sending us somewhere, and I'm very curious to find out where. They continued on in the direction the arrows had been leading them, but saw no more boulders. The arrows led them straight toward a stream. Do you want to cross the stream? Paloma asked. I guess we should. It looks very shallow, I'll reread that. I guess we should. It looks very shallow, so if we tiptoe from stone to stone, perhaps we'll find another arrow on the other side. Hold my hand tight. We'll cross together. Answers. They crossed the stream, holding hands, stepping carefully. When they reached the other side, they almost crashed into the next boulder. It was hidden in a grove of old pine trees. Do you think there's anything carved on it? Papa asked. Let's take a look, Paloma said. They knelt down together side by side and examined the boulder. At first they couldn't find an arrow or any other carving, and they were about to give up when Paloma gasped. I found something, she shouted as she leaned closer to the boulder and scraped off some moss with her fingers. Look, Papa, it's not an arrow at all. A whole bunch of letters are carved into the lower part of the boulder. I wonder if we can make them out, she said. I'm afraid you'll have to read them to me. Papa stood up slowly, rubbing his knees. My eyes are too old to make out tiny letters that have been hidden behind overgrown weeds for such a long time. I'm afraid my knees aren't too good either. Paloma leaned closer to the boulder and studied the letters. It took her a long time, but she was finally able to read them all. They don't make any sense, she said. I'll say them to you, but I don't think they mean anything at all. Paloma read each letter out loud very slowly. G, P, M, M, P, X, U, I, F, E, S, J, O, L, J, O, H, H, P, V, S, E. When she finished, she said, maybe they're a code. Do you think they could be a code, Papa? Read them again, Papa said. Maybe I can make some sense of them if you read them again. Paloma said the letters again, and then she repeated them one more time. As she read, she could hear Grandfather's footsteps. He was pacing slowly through the dead leaves and pine needles. Papa always paced when he had something important to think over. Do they mean anything to you? She asked when she was done. Indeed they do, her grandfather said, still pacing. Indeed they do. What do you think the letters mean? I'm not exactly sure, Papa, but I think it's a cipher, and I think I recognize it. Paloma knew what a cipher was. It was a code that substituted letters or numbers for the real letters in a message. Ciphers like that one have been used in many wars to keep the enemy from learning about battle plans, Papa explained. Cracking the code. Did you use a cipher in the war? Paloma asked. I saw them used in World War II. The Germans had a very clever machine called the Enigma machine that substituted letters for other letters. The code talkers often used a cipher as well in case a native language speaker was captured and forced to translate messages by the enemy. But the first substitution cipher was invented by Julius Caesar more than 2,000 years ago. This is an example of a Caesar cipher. Can you break the code? NBCMCMUH YRUGJFYIZU WUYMUL WCJBYL. Hint, the cipher shifts each letter in the alphabet forward by the same number of letters. I wonder if these letters were used in a war too, Paloma said. Papa had to think about that. He paced for a very long time, then he stopped beside his granddaughter and cleared his throat. I think I remember something, he said. As you know, a great war took place right around here. The Civil War, right, Papa? The Civil War? Right, Papa? Paloma asked. Yes, about 150 years ago, the Civil War was fought to free the enslaved people in the United States. I think I remember reading that the soldiers and spies in the North used a special cipher. Do you remember what it was, Papa? It was sort of like Caesar's cipher. Read me the letters again. Paloma read the letters slowly. G, P, M, M, P, X, U, I, F, E, S, J, O, L, J, O, H, H, P, V, S, E. You forgot the spaces, he said. Read the letters again and don't forget the spaces between the words. Paloma read the letters again. This time she was careful to pause wherever she saw a space. G, M, G, P, M, M, P, X, U, I, F, E, S, J, O, L, J, O, H, H, P, V, S, E. She was just about to ask her grandfather what the letters meant when she noticed something in the cipher that she had seen in codes she had deciphered before. Most sentences contain at least one short common word, and this one was no different. I think I see some interesting letters, she said. Let's say the letters form words. One of the words has 3 letters. Let's guess that it's a common word, like and or the. Paloma suggested. There has to be one common word in a sentence. Paloma and Papa were quiet for several minutes as they thought about the 3 letters. I don't think it's and, Papa said. The letters don't make sense. But it could be the, Paloma said. Maybe the letters U, I, F stand for the in some way. Papa was smiling now. You are a very smart girl, he said. What letter comes before U in the alphabet? T, Paloma said, and the letter H comes before I, and the letter E comes before F. This is a substitute letter cipher, Papa. Yes, I remember now. During the Civil War, some Northern spies and soldiers used a code called the advanced cipher. They advanced each letter, one letter of the alphabet. The drinking gourd. Once they had cracked the code, it was easy to read the message. Do you know what it says? Paloma asked. I do know what it says. Do you know what it says? I know what it says, Papa. It says, follow the drinking gourd, but I don't know what the message means. Do you know what the message means? Papa chuckled and sat down on a hollow log. We've made quite a discovery, he said. We have found 6 arrows pointing in the same direction. If people followed the arrows, they would reach this boulder, and they would find this cipher. I wonder if the arrows in the cipher were carved during the Civil War. Papa was pacing again now, and Paloma could tell that he was thinking things over in his mind. Before the end of the war, he said, many enslaved people wanted to escape to the north. They followed what was called the Underground Railroad. It wasn't really a railroad. It was just a series of routes and directions and safe houses that led the enslaved people northward. Some who had escaped returned to help others. But who carved the arrows, Papa? I'm not sure if we'll ever know that, Papa said. It might have been a northern spy trying to help. It might have been a returning enslaved person who had learned the cipher in the north. Or maybe it had nothing to do with the war. Who knows? Maybe some children were playing a game. I'm gonna let you guys go ahead and read the rest on your own. And then go ahead and put your headphones down once you are done. Thank y'all.